We've entered a super spooky time for hiring. We hear about ghosting and phantom jobs and jobs that disappear on people. Here's what one of the comments in my comments section just said. I'm a skilled mid-level worker and I'm running into so many scam jobs. Ghost jobs that pay laughable wages, jobs that keep getting frozen, and jobs that are not even trying to be filled. Most of the time, I don't hear back from anywhere. It's like I'm yelling out into a black void. People feel this way. Here's another one. I talked about some jobs and the job growth that we're seeing right now. And it said, yeah, those added jobs mainly are government and not private sectors. And also they're ghost jobs. Don't believe all the hype. Next, just got ghosted after being asked when I could start as an unpaid assistant. I said I could start in 2 days. That's on a Monday. I've been ghosted now by 4 jobs that essentially told me I was hired. They're in New York. Let's dive into each one of these. But before we do that, I need to ask you to go into the comments and tell me about your experience. Do you have experience being ghosted, or do you have some other experience in the job market? I'd love to hear where you're coming from on this. The other thing is, I'm putting this content out as often as I possibly can. So if you'd like to see more of it as it comes along, hit subscribe. I'd love for you to be able to see it when it comes out. So why does ghosting feel so much more prevalent nowadays than it did before? There's some data out that Indeed actually conducted a survey not too long ago. They completed this survey in 2023. And what it says is that ghosting is prevalent both from employers ghosting candidates, but also even more often from candidates ghosting employers. So let's look at these statistics. What this says is job seekers who think ghosting has become more common in the past 12 months. That's up from a 2022 survey of 39% to 2023, it said 46%. We're in 24. I bet that's continued to grow. Job seekers who say they've ghosted an employer before, 68% before 2021, to 78% after 2021. And finally, 77% of employers say that they think ghosting has become more common among job seekers during 2022 than in previous years. So this is happening. It has been accelerating. I think it feels a little bit like if I don't need to talk to you, then I'm not going to talk to you. It's a rudeness that shows up. So let's talk about the different types of ghosting that are taking place. First, there's the super spooky. I almost think of this as the ghost ship set adrift, the ghost jobs. Second, there are the disappearing people. So the people who you have been working with who no longer work with you, those are the ghosting people, the disappearing people. And thirdly, the thing that you're doing right now, oftentimes as candidates, the disappearing candidates. So disappearing candidates in the process. Let's talk about each of those, why those happen, because there is a really straightforward reason on why these things happen. And then when we're done solving those mysteries, we'll be the Scooby Gang. When we're done solving those mysteries, we'll talk about what you do about being ghosted. And I've got a tip for you that will allow you to stay in contact with that employer and even reach back out if you've lost contact with an employer. Now, chances are they're just not that into you because they haven't followed up, but I can tell you how to find out for sure and how to get in touch with people for sure. So that's where we're going to go with this. All right. First thing, let's talk about these ghost jobs, the ghost jobs that sit out there today and that some of the people in the comments were talking about. Now, these are jobs that you apply to and you just don't see any movement at all. They may have been posted forever ago and they've been sitting out there adrift and nothing has been done. I think of it like a ghost ship that's just out there. There's no one on that ship. No one's manning the rudder. It's just going to go where the seas take it. Now, these ghost jobs exist for a couple of reasons. Let me start with this. Jobs are never easy to post. It costs money most of the time, especially if you see a sponsored job, somebody's paying money to sponsor that job. They don't waste money on purpose. They have that job posted. They have that job sponsored because they need to fill that job. So just know that's the case. Second thing to know, it is a really high bar to approve a requisition to hire. So you typically have to go through a multi-step approval process. There are multiple people who have to sign up for a requisition to be created and then ultimately to be posted. No one does this without an intent to ultimately make a hire. It just doesn't happen. Now, what may happen, what may be the case, is that they've posted a job and they've seen the first few candidates and they were happy with those people who applied, and they started moving forward with those candidates, but they never did unpost the job. That job is done and there's no reason to apply any longer. And they've got plenty of candidates already. The proper thing to do is to turn off that job. They need to cancel the job, or at least unpost the job is really the right thing to do. They need to unpost it. And that's the proper thing as a recruiter. There's a solid chance you're dealing with an inexperienced or a bad recruiter if they're not unposting their job when they have enough candidates. Because here's what's going to happen in the end. In the end, everyone who applies for that job, any company worth their salt, you have to disposition every candidate, meaning everybody that comes through, because of the Office of Federal Contract Compliance, that the OFCCP is who monitors the equal employment rules that we have. Because of the OFCCP's rules, you're going to need to disposition or say why you didn't pick every candidate who applies. It's on you as a recruiter to unpost that position so that you're not stuck dispositioning hundreds and hundreds of people who you probably shouldn't have received applications from in the first place anyway. All right. That's what's happening with a ghost job and why it's out there and why it feels like you're shouting into the void. The number one complaint from candidates is this feeling that they're shouting into the void, that no one hears them, that they apply for jobs and no one gets back to them. And that is bad behavior. Failure to communicate is always bad behavior, and it shouldn't be tolerated by the recruiters or the bosses, honestly. So I agree with you. That shouldn't be the case. Unfortunately, that's where we are right now. Okay, so those are the ghost jobs. Let's talk about the people who seem to disappear. Like magic, they disappear on you. There's two reasons. One might be okay. One might be just laziness and bad behavior on a recruiter's part. The one that's okay is this. It's currently really difficult to move people through the hiring process. And what will oftentimes happen is a recruiter will work with you and you'll interview for a job and they don't hear back from the hiring manager on status or how things went for a really long time. They'll follow up with that manager. Now, remember that hiring manager, they're hiring for a reason. Their team is underpowered. They're understaffed. That manager is probably picking up some of the slack. So they're really busy. So I get why this happens, but this is what's happening. It's a failure to communicate inside the company that's oftentimes the culprit here and the reason why you're not getting feedback. Another reason you might not be getting feedback is that they picked the other guy. So you're in there, if you're interviewing for a job, chances are there's at least one or two other people interviewing for the same job. And if they've selected someone, they may not come back to you until that person has already accepted a position, accepted an offer, and has started. Then they'll go back. They're closing out the rec. So when the rec is closed up, you'll get an automated message. Now, this also is bad behavior. What should happen is they should come back to you following the interview and give you some feedback and let you know that you weren't selected personally. That's the accepted practice. The bad behavior practice is the system just automatically closes out and gives you some feedback. And it does it really late because it's waiting until that requisition closes out. And then all the other candidates that were on the requisition, they also get dispositioned along the way. That's what's happening with those hiring authorities and the people who are disappearing. So that's one thing that could be happening. The other thing that could be happening is they're having a really hard time. This is the positive one. They're having a hard time getting things approved. So if you've gone into an interview and you've talked about compensation and where you need to be, the next step for them, if they want to hire you, is to go into the offer stage. Like one of the comments was, hey, I was offered this job. I said, here's when I can start. And then nothing. They went back. What happened was the person that was doing the hiring, they went back to their boss and said, right on, I've got this person. They can start now. And then their boss got a little bit of cold feet. They're a little worried financially. They're worried about making sure that they have enough work for this person to do. And they said, hold on a second, let's give this a minute. And they pushed back and they asked for some additional information. So there's this slowness in the process. Everything is really slow. It feels like you're trudging through mud to get anything done right now. It's the nature of work. I haven't seen any hiring freezes, but it feels like you're walking in quicksand all the time right now in the current process. That's what's happening here. I think the best case scenario, if people have gone dark on you, is that they're working on it. They haven't quite gotten there with the job. Now, let's talk about this. Candidates are ghosting employers. In fact, candidates are ghosting employers more often than employers are ghosting candidates. A higher percentage of the time, candidates are ghosting employers. Why is that? It's because you have the same thing. You do the same behavior, and maybe the way to fix this, just as an overall job market, is that everybody starts behaving nicely and starts treating people like humans. And if you don't want the job, just tell them, hey, I don't want this job. And the recruiter on their side, if they don't want to hire you for the job, they should just tell you, hey, you didn't make the cut. Somebody else got the job instead of you. There probably needs to be better communication. But what's happening, the reason I think ghosting exists is a fear of confrontation. It's a fear of saying, not into this job, I'm out. Or this job's not into you and you're out. But either way, that fear of confrontation, not being willing to go and have a conversation like grownups do, I think that's the real ghosting thing. It's pretty bad behavior. We don't want to do that. As a society, it really makes everybody feel bad. So let's try to build a society where everybody feels good. So do me a favor. You do your best to communicate with people. And I'm going to encourage every recruiter I know to do their best to communicate with you. And maybe we'll chip away at this really bad behavior that's permeating our society right now. We'll change the world together. Or maybe not. Who knows? We'll see. All right. Here's what you do though. If you've been ghosted, what you really want to know is your status. You want to know, am I being ghosted because they picked the other guy, or am I being ghosted because they're just having to go through a bunch of work and go through their process? And you might be. It might be that they're just not that into you. It might be that they're just having to trudge through their own internal process. Here's how you get in touch with them. Now, chances are, hopefully, you have a recruiter's name. You have a specific name for a recruiter or the hiring manager, like you've interviewed at this point. If you've already been through the whole process and you've interviewed and you get ghosted at the end, like that one comment, you have somebody to call. Just call. So call, email, text. Actually, I'd start with text. Text, then call, then email. Do it all. Send them all at once. And here's what you say. Hi, I wanted to follow up to see where we are on this role. I haven't received new hire paperwork yet. I haven't seen an offer yet from you. Now, in the interview process, here's the other trick. This is a big deal. In the interview process, there's two questions I always tell people to ask. One is a little more controversial. I heard somebody contradict me on this one, but I think it's the right thing to do, where you ask, is there anything in my background that's a red flag or concern that I can address right now? So that's my number one question. But number two is, do you have an idea what the process is from here and when I can expect to hear back from you? This solves the ghosting problem. Here's why. It makes a social commitment between the recruiter and you. And what it says is, you will hear back from me on this date. Now, the follow-up question is this. If I don't hear back from you, where's the best place for me to contact you? And they can give you an email address, a phone number, whatever. But you're setting the expectation that you are going to be the person following up. Now, what I'll say is the person I work for right now is a very busy guy, and he's got just a ton going on. And when I was interviewing here, I had to take control of the process in that I was reaching out to him. I was texting him saying, all right, next step is this. Didn't hear from you today. I thought I would. Where would you like to schedule a call for tomorrow? Here's when I'm free, right? And I started driving the process a little bit, and that ultimately resulted in a really positive result. I'm really happy with my job and those sorts of things. You may have to do that some with these individuals, but you can. That's completely okay. If you set it up during the interview, that's your trick. That's the big tip for today. All right. Thank you for being my Scooby pals on this, solving the mystery of the ghost jobs that we have out there. Jinkies, I think we did it. All right. So here's the thing. I want to give you two sets of things as we leave here. Number one, this is a playlist that I'm putting up right now. tells you all the steps you need to go through to get hired. I think that's valuable for you. It's absolutely free. It's on YouTube. I don't ask you for a thing. It's yours to view and use however you like. Number two, these in-credit cards that you see here, I've put 4 resources up that I think are valuable for you right here on the sides. And those also are things that I've recorded just for you. And hopefully they will help in your job search. I really hope you find a great deal of success in your job search. I hope you find a better thing. Best of luck.